And for the benefit of the group, we're recording the session today as a way to present this information on our new CETA University landing page or knowledge base that's on the CETA.org website. So as we look to host more of these events in the future, we'll have a pathway to providing access for folks who think about it after or didn't have the availability to join us today. Well, I'm going to kick things off. Welcome to today's discussion related to supply chain challenges hosted by the CETA University team, as well as some special guests that are joining the call to share some insights into the world of supply chain challenges. My name is Mike Tonys. I work for Hydroflex, a supplier member here based in the Twin Cities, and I've been fortunate enough to be the CETA University chairperson since we kind of reignited the CETA University brand to bring it into today's modern society, which providing access to tools and resources via our online knowledge base. And another key component of education, in addition to regional events and power clean events, we felt that we can reach audiences now digitally via GoToMeeting, and this would be a great way to bring members together for networking, knowledge sharing, and ultimately helping your businesses thrive and grow based on current key events or things that are happening that are relevant in current times. So today's topic, the university committee unanimously decided when we were pitching ideas of what topic we should have to host our first event, unanimously supply chain challenges won out, and we felt that was really probably most timely and critical to what we're all facing in our business today, whether we're a distributor trying to get parts or equipment, we're a supplier or a manufacturer trying to source raw materials to run our businesses. And so our goal today, we certainly know that we don't have the wherewithal to give every answer that's going to be out there. But as a group and as a network of peers, we hope to provide first really a higher level overview of what is driving the key supply chain challenges. So you're going to hear from a purchasing member of our team here at Hydroflex as she discusses the climate around what's driving supply chain challenges. And then we're going to turn it over to two industry veterans, Al and Greg, and they're going to speak to some ideas that they know some key successful distributors are deploying, as well as best practices to navigate the world of our current climate with supply chain challenges. We hope this is an interactive session. So as the presenters go through their slide materials, if you feel there's a question that comes up at the end of the slide, we'd like you to engage that way with the group. Please use the chat feature as well. I'll be monitoring the chat and helping the presenters know that there's a question available. At the end, we hope there's time for a roundtable discussion similar to the events you may have participated in at roundtables, at regional events or power clean events, where there's additional ideas and thoughts that may be present from each of the members of the call joining us today. And it's a great time for us to share in that. You've invested in the hour to learn and be educated, and we want to provide as much value as we can to the group. So with that intro, I'm going to go to the next slide and introduce Laura Bowman from Hydroflex here in Savage. And I mentioned she's one of our supply chain procurement specialists. She's joined us today to really share a lot of the macro events that are driving many of the challenges we read about or hear about day in and day out. So Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to advance to the next slide.
Thank you, Mike. Yep, my name is Laura. I am the buyer here at Hydroflex. We are a team of two in the purchasing department, so definitely very hands-on with everything that's going on right now. So just want to talk a little bit about kind of the issues that I'm dealing with day to day in my job, and hopefully you guys can glean some perspective from that area as well. So right now, I would say COVID, as much as we're sick of hearing about COVID, it's really been a huge impact on our supply chain. In the beginning, manufacturers kind of had to reduce their capacity, possibly even shut down, lay off employees, kind of shrink their operations in some ways, shapes, or forms, or they just had less orders coming in as well. Slowly, the stock that they've had built up and the supplies they've had built up have kind of depleted a little bit, and they've had to start bringing more in as you guys are probably feeling. The tap's kind of turning back on now for us. Customers are buying more. there's just a lot more demand out in the market. However, the spike in us wanting more products is creating a larger demand for raw materials, more freight, and more packaging supplies. So I would say the biggest things that we're missing right now, lumber is a huge issue. So even pallets, the pallets that we ship our products on or receive our products on, almost doubling. Plastics is a huge one. Stainless steel, even some of the cables that we use in our wash systems, and then semiconductors as well. So especially with plastics, you all heard about the Texas storm in February, I believe. That is still having a huge resounding impact on the plastics industry, just because getting all the plastics is petroleum based. And so, it's easy for us in Minnesota to say, oh yeah, they had a snowstorm, but they don't have the infrastructure to kind of get through that without burst pipes or severe damage to their facilities. And it's just difficult for them to kind of leave the factory, shut everything down, and just get everything back up and running. It's taking weeks, sometimes even months, to get those taps turned back on from those factories, which is causing a huge shortage for plastics. As a result, we're seeing huge increases in pricing for those things as well. The semiconductor shortages, even Tesla, Ford, all of those companies are having to scale back their production of electric vehicles, and I think all vehicles at this point, just because they're not able to, get the pieces that they need to get those cars actually running and on the road. So that's going to, spike a lot of pricing as well with the cars they are able to produce. Let's see. Okay, so air cargo is another huge issue due to COVID, because, people are starting to travel now more with the vaccines, but it's actually, it's been interesting because actually a lot of the air cargo space shares with passenger planes. So when there are less people flying, there are less planes, and thus less cargo space for our products to travel internationally, nationally, et cetera. So there's less capacity. So people have chosen boats over air freight because that air freight is a bit more expensive. And the ocean rates are now increasing because issues like the Suez Canal. We all saw that ship get stuck and block off accessibility to other ships and access to that canal. And the increase in boat freight as well, even on other routes, is leading to backups at the actual docks. So one issue that we heard about recently is the LA port typically has about 12 to 17 container ships waiting to be received at any given time. Right now, it's more like 47. So reduced capacity at the ports as well, less people working because of the pandemic, is creating an issue for unloading those boats. So for example, we have a pump that we order from Indiana, and usually the issue was getting imports out of Mexico, but that's actually not our issue anymore. The issue is the castings that they use are coming in from overseas, and they're stuck in the ports, and they can't tell us when they're going to get to them, despite the fact that they've had them on order, they've been here, they just haven't been able to leave those docks. And they don't know about those issues until we do. They basically just hear at the last second, oh yeah, they just left. So they're not able to give us really good visibility into the availability dates. So yes, and then there are also container shortages because the boats that are coming across are stacked so high, they're actually losing the containers because they're not built to carry as many containers as they are. So we're actually seeing iPads dropping into the ocean in those containers. The people who produce those containers know that there's a shortage, but they also know that this is kind of a cliff. It's going to drop off at some point and things are going to go back to a little bit more normalcy. And so they don't want to be stuck with all of these extra containers. And so it's just a little bit of an issue on their end there. We can go to the next slide. So all of this is impacting our costs. On a global scale, our companies are facing increasing costs of all kinds. The material, of course, is a huge part of that issue. Here at Hydroflex, every single product line that we have touches plastic. So there's really no getting around it. And the other thing with plastics as well is that it's so heavily used in PPE. So some of that air freight and some of that material is going more towards PPE globally instead of to our more normal products that we would like to see come to us. And we are seeing increases on those raw materials. Plastics, we're seeing increases every time we place an order for plastic bar stock or anything like that. And pricing is extremely volatile. Usually when we send a part out for quote, we have about 60 days with that price. Right now, if holding for more than 2 days or 3 days, the quote is expired after 5 days, which is extremely a very small amount of time, especially if you're shopping out multiple options and waiting for multiple quotes. So that's been a huge challenge. So even when we are ready to order at certain points, we're seeing increased prices within a few days when we decide to order. The other thing is that we're all seeing these types of shortages, especially as I mentioned, like cables has been a really big issue. We are seeing people kind of hoarding those cables. We've actually had situations where the company that we are buying for or producing for actually has extras of those parts and are giving them back to us or selling them back to us so that we can use them for their production, which is, it just seems crazy. There are a lot of situations like that going on right now, which is, it's nice that they're savvy, but it is creating quite a bit of a bubble. Eventually, all of those extra things will not be needed, and we'll see the other side of this. So what we are doing to kind of mitigate this here at Hydroflex, we're doing a ton of dual sourcing. We want to be dual or triple sourced in as many possible products as possible. We're trying to stabilize pricing and mitigate those price increases. Some things we're doing to do that. We are placing blanket orders at that lower price, as I mentioned with the quotes. Placing a blanket order so that the company knows that they can feel secure in securing all of that product for us and having it on the shelf for about 6 months. We are also looking for price decreases with our dual sourcing efforts, and just trying to create visibility through our supply chain so we can place multiple orders at once and know that they're going to be able to get those parts scheduled and, you know, have the visibility to know what we're going to need coming up. Of course, there will be adjustments there needed, but working closely with the vendors to let them know what we need is extremely important. Keeping that communication strong, keeping those relationships strong, it's absolutely imperative. Let's see, the other thing that we're doing is monitoring every single cost fluctuation in conjunction with our accounting department, making sure that we are able to see on the back end how that's affecting our final cost. So lastly, we are looking for volume decreases. So ordering more at once of, like, maybe we would normally order for 2 weeks or a month. We're ordering now for about 2 months of demand that we know that we have, so that we're not hoarding, but we are capturing price decreases. And then for our dual sourcing, we've also started working closely with our engineering and quality teams to kind of form a tiger team to source out those dual sourcing and get them approved immediately so that we can move on with those price decreases and more secure supply. So that's a really, really quick nutshell version of some of the issues that we're going through and how we're dealing with them. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have when appropriate.
Thank you, Laura. I don't see any questions in the chat, but before we move on to the next section, the goal is to really provide kind of that overarching framework of, you can see how many things are being impacting the ultimate, availability of goods or pricing of goods. Does anybody have any questions or comments before we move to how do you now navigate the current landscape? All right, well, let's jump
Michael?
ahead. Oh, yes,
Mike?
go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, because of experience in his, what he's subjected to, if Daniel has a little more input on the macro from his perspective. I think it's probably a lot of the same stuff, but it was a fantastic presentation there, Laura, and I just was curious if Michael had, or excuse me, Daniel had anything to add.
Yeah, we're struggling with all the things that Laura mentioned. You know, being an automotive manufacturer, we are struggling with the semiconductor shortage. It's been a very, very difficult year. You know, typically, as Laura mentioned, there's been reports of supply ships out in the LA port sitting there for 2 weeks waiting for an appointment to get in and unload their cargo. So it's just been a really, really difficult year, which has driven up, you know, the cost of goods and cost of manufacturing. The other thing, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, Laura, but we had to kind of redesign a lot of our manufacturing lines to create more distancing between people and put more safety components in the manufacturing process so people wouldn't get sick. And so that adds it brings down the efficiency in our plants. We have higher absenteeism than normal. We have higher turnover than normal because the plants are a little sort of inherently more dangerous because sometimes you're standing right next to people. There's a lot of people on the line. So, you know, all of those things are also affecting us. So it's been very, very difficult. And then the last thing I'll say is you combine all of that and the retailers are not interested in a price increase. So you got that pressure on top of it saying none of the retailers are interested in price increases. They're really pushing back on the price increases. You know, the demand has gone through the roof, especially for cleaning products because everyone's staying home. This is the first time people are actually buying larger houses in a long time with more land, and people are doing way more projects at home. So the DIY component's gone through the roof. And so it's just a super difficult environment. Of course, we'll get out of it and we'll figure it out. But so that's all I'd add. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. All right.
Again,
Go ahead, Al.
I'm sorry. Again, last thing on that, from that macro perspective, is there any kind of, nobody has a clear crystal ball, but any kind of idea when things might be smoothing out? I mean, I'm hearing things from, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better, clear into the third quarter. Just any comments to that point?
Laura or Daniel?
Yeah, we've been hearing a little bit 2020 to 2023. I think it's going to depend on the type of component. I think the semiconductors are going to be a ways away.
Yep.
I have a feeling with kind of the stainless steel and the plastics that might be possibly 2022, just as things get back up and running. That would be fantastic.
I would agree. Semiconductors a year out. The other thing that we were very afraid of is India was really struggling. They were having up to 2,000 deaths a day for COVID, but they seem to have gotten a little better. So an additional spike. I mean, I think the last time I looked, U.S. is about 15–20% vaccinated, but places like India are below 5%. And so when there's an outbreak, it spreads much quicker and it's much more impactful if you're doing manufacturing in India. And India is one of the places I was thinking about. But, you know, so we got that going on. But yeah, it's I think we have at least this year for a lot of things, and then the semiconductors probably into a good way into next year. Mm-hmm. And then things could change, of course, if we have another outbreak or another sort of pandemic or something.
Mm-hmm.
And one small thing to add there as well. The truck driver shortage. So when things are being unloaded in LA, it's near impossible sometimes to find someone within several days to pick up those deliveries. And sometimes they have to stop cross country halfway and they get docked for another week or so, which is happening currently with us. As the unemployment situations change here in the US, and those extra 300s and stuff start drying up, and that unemployment process starts getting more rigid like it has been, where you have to be proving that you're looking for work and everything like that, the jobs are there for people. So I think that's been a little bit difficult on the transportation side as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, great questions, Al. Thanks again, Laura, for supporting our goal of education today. Daniel, certainly some great insights from your role as well. So as we transition to the next portion, that's what's happening, and you can hear from both Daniel and Laura as manufacturers. We're deploying a lot of steps to mitigate as much as we can, and as distributors and suppliers to the industry, there's also ways that we hope to help promote your businesses through the response that each of you may take away. And Greg and Al are going to lead us through some ideas that they've picked up from the field. So I'm going to click ahead here and turn it over to both of you.
Thank you, Mike. My name is Greg Brodsky with Alcoda Cleaning Systems. And again, Laura, you did a fantastic job in regards to explaining how we got to where we are today. But I think what's on everybody's mind is how we blaze forward from here. And Al and I have chatted behind the scenes with numerous conversations, plus some committee meetings here, and we have all the answers. We don't. Needless to say, the association CETA offers up some solutions, or if you will, tools, and hopefully these tools are something that we can put to work to make this easier on all of us as a group. And that's the one thing that I feel is really lost with an organization the size of CETA, is I've heard throughout my 50-year career is where's the beef? Well, the beef is on everybody that's on this phone call right now, is that we make the association. You get out of it what you put into it, and just the pure networking, which is the second to the last item on this slide that's currently up, is a pure networking, which is part of what we're doing today, is an unsung hero. And some of us do an excellent job at pure networking, and there's a lot of us that don't do networking at all. And I think that's a shame. And hopefully, as we get more, kind of put it back on track, if you will, in regards to how we blaze through this tunnel that we've entered. We can barely see the light at the end of the tunnel, and things will get better, but it's going to be a rough next 12 to 18 months. There's going to be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And with the help of everybody that's here today, we're going to get through it. No ifs, ands, or buts again. But Al, I'm just going to move forward, and I'll let you do your introduction here after I go through a couple key slides or points here. But the key supplier issue, what we're talking about here is not knowing where we're going, and what we need to do is that you have to strategize with all of your key suppliers out there today. And I, working for a manufacturer, we have all of our key vendors and suppliers, and many manufacturers out there are executing or commissioning new hires, basically to go out and facilitate new relationships with a third or fourth vendor that we currently may not be doing business with today. And these new teams, as they arise, again, the pool of attending vendors out there are very small. In our industry, theoretically, we're taking off-the-shelf components and utilize them in our own fashion or form. Off-the-shelf pumps, off-the-shelf motors, off-the-shelf electrical components. But we're not Apple. Apple's an example where they no longer use Intel chips. They're building their own chips internally. And there's very few in our industry that are capable of producing something like that. You take a look at the automobile manufacturing and Tesla. Everybody's doing everything in-house. Amazon's creating their own transportation companies. Walmart's been transporting their own goods for years now. And our industry is not to that particular point yet that we're going to have these mass producers of product. We're somewhat segmented out there. And that's why associations such as CETA are even that much more important, because as an individual, we're just a grain of sand in the hourglass, but together we make the hourglass. So as you take a look at your own business internally, you've got key suppliers out there as well. And key suppliers, I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit to the next slide. You don't need to pull it up yet, Mike, but But loyalty is one thing that we all strive for out there, and satisfied customers, manufacturers, wholesale. Everybody thinks we're struggling and trying to succeed in finding satisfied customers. And truly, a satisfied customer or key vendor or manufacturer, a satisfied is basically somebody that's only going to commit to you when convenient. What you're after is a long-term relationship, a loyal vendor and key supplier. And if you haven't done this, and mapping your own business, if you mapped your own supply chain, how many have mapped their own key supply chain today? Very few, I promise you. And part of mapping your key supply chain is not just listing who you are in the nucleus, everybody feeding your business, and then everybody on the outlet side of your business. That's a simple way to map your business and your key supply chain. But your key supply chain, again, on a simple question here in business, how many have done the 80-20 rule? I think we've all heard of it, but how many have executed in your own business? General rule of thumb is you're going to find that 80% of your business is going to be driven by 20% of your client base. And that's going to be the same with your key suppliers. You're doing 80% of your business with 20% of your key vendors. It works on both sides of the fence, whether it's in or out. And the inlet side of it, your key suppliers, your key manufacturers, those people are the ones that are loyal to you. And when I say loyal, if they're not doing their job, then it's our help, as Laura mentioned, is that you can go and resend the components back to your manufacturer so they can build for you. But the day and the age of getting the specific engine that you want, or the specific pump that you want, or the specific trigger gun you want, these are the things that are probably not going to be back to normal for 18 to 24 months, if they ever come back to what we'd classify normal. So when you're working with your key suppliers, you have to take a look at, are they one of my 20% doing 80% of my business? And if they're not, then you have to move that key supplier into 3 different categories. And for me, the 3 different categories are low, medium, and high risk. A low risk is somebody that I go to whenever convenient, when I'm in a pinch. A medium risk is somebody that you would go to that is kind of middle of the road. They do okay. I can share a story with you of a person I used to call on many years ago. I sat in his office. A salesman pops his head in, interrupts our meeting, and asks the individual I'm sitting across the desk from if there's anything he needs today. And the guy that I was calling on said, "No, I'm sorry, not today." And the salesperson vanished and closed the door behind him. So I asked the individual what the salesperson was selling. And the guy threw up his hand and says, "Hell, I don't know." He sticks his head in the door every Monday and asks if I need something, and out the door he goes. And I think that's the way that at times with certain key suppliers and vendors out there is that we really don't get into the nuts and bolts of what we're looking for. And again, that we are open to alternatives. And if we're open to those alternatives, maybe you can take a low risk or a medium risk and move them into a high risk. And a high risk is somebody that if I, again, was Intel and I just lost Apple, that would be a major blow to the infrastructure of Intel. So if you've got somebody out there that's supplying mega components with very little dollar value to it, but your system doesn't run without it, you've got to make a choice. So make your 3 choices up there: low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And the second tier basically is the loyal or satisfied. And again, you got to remember, satisfied only returns when convenient. And the loyal key manufacturers, as an example, there's very few manufacturers that are left out there today that are not manufacturing listed components. Now, in many cases, you cannot change a pump, you can't change a contactor, you can't change a relay. Every one of us in this business today are breaking those rules and have been for generations. But all of a sudden now we want to follow by those rules. When we're a technician and you're repairing widget A out there and you take an unloader or a relay off, if you don't put that specific unloader or relay back on that unit, it's no longer a listed appliance. So this idea in today's world that we can only sell a listed appliance, I think has been gravely overspoken. And I think that's where many of your key manufacturers, even though we all break the rules every day, most will not, in most cases, change an unloader or a pump. So when you're seeking out key manufacturers, see how well they are hinged to UL 1776, because taking off a blue widget pump and putting on a green widget pump, as long as the specs are the same, may get you out of a pinch as well as your end user. So the key wholesalers out there, again, everybody wants to stick to the same price. That's going to be a little bit of the problem that we deal with right now, is that in order to stay competitive, everything in this industry has always been price hinged. Everything is price, 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 price. But again, a loyal customer will come back even if your price is higher, because they realize that you're an extremely important part of their network and they can't operate without you. But when you get into the retail business and this key wholesale part, the Walmart is an example, Amazon is an example. It's kind of like, if you don't like what we're planning or presenting, you can't match the price, step aside. We got 1,000 of you right behind you. So that's where you have to go back again and do the 80-20 rule. Is this something that I need to put into? Is it generating 80% of my revenues in that category? And are they 20% of my key wholesaler? And if they're not, you need to move them around in regards to your risk factor in those 3 categories that I just gave you. And last but not least is the peer network. The peer network, we've got inventory throughout this country that might be sitting in Los Angeles that somebody in New York needs. Somehow we got to come up with a way to advertise or show this inventory. Whether it be a piece or a part or finished goods, I guarantee that a majority of the stuff that could plug a hole is out there. It's in a box. It's ready to go. It's just nobody knows where it's at. And the association, CETA is going to be working on, I don't know how we're going to get it done, but some way, somehow, we're going to entertain the idea of posting some inventory out there. If guys got dead inventory in Los Angeles, that we can find somebody throughout the other contiguous 48 states, or maybe even worldwide, that could utilize that product, including the key suppliers and key manufacturers and key wholesalers. We all have inventory sitting on our shelves that hasn't moved, dead inventory. Maybe some of it's even been written off. But in today's world, right now, we're looking for something to plug a hole, literally plug a hole. And if we can do that, then we maintain that loyal status that we're all after out there today. So leveraging the CETA network, the manufacturers, suppliers, and distributors, is somewhat the same as the peer networks itself. We have to leverage ourselves to get to the finish line. And again, as an individual or a grain of sand in the hourglass, and together we are the hourglass. And sessions like this, when I was president of the association in 2009, I always started off all of my sessions with, this is not the Brodsky show. We need participation. And everybody out there today has a question or a concern. And if this isn't the format that you want to portray that in, then don't hesitate to call after hours. My cell phone hasn't changed in 50 years, and it's still available. Or drop a note off to Tracy or Debbie and let us do some research internally on that. But we're willing to do whatever we have to do to try to keep this nucleus of the glue, if you will, together on what we're attempting to do. So again, that's just a little bit of a highlight of where I think things are going, and again, just offering up the fact that we'll get through this, but we have to open up this line of communication between everybody. So, Al, I'm going to throw it off to you for a couple of minutes here.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'm Al Boniface with Allspray, and kind of coming at it from the distributor end a little more. But I appreciate what Greg's talking about and everybody before, and how to think about this in a larger frame or larger picture. Strategizing, key suppliers, manufacturers, the 80-20, all that stuff is super important. And we need to, think along the lines of being more proactive than reactive in these times. And that's really hard. Didn't even realize you were out of this, or, things creep up on you, but that's all more reason to keep track of inventory levels and, you know, keep track of what all's going on in your organization. But, you know, I think this forum and this type of getting together and talking about this also lends itself to getting down to just, you know, practical, what about this, what about that? We didn't want to get into it a whole bunch today, but I'm sure some questions will come up, and I think there's some value to that, all the way down to, you know, anybody having trouble getting some kind of nozzle or who knows what. You know? And that's where this communication comes in, you know, between different distributors, between, you know, with your manufacturers, and Greg said it, with, you know, the more relationship that you have with someone, you know, the better chance that you can work something out with them, if at all possible. And two, it's a chance for them to build on that relationship. And, you know, we I would much rather be trying to talk to 2 or 3 different key suppliers than 15, 20, you know. And I saw it happen at my business today with somebody that's wanting, you know, kind of a skid for their operation. And, you know, I'm hearing things like middle of August before it can hit the production schedule, you know, or and so you know, we try to research and find out who we can get it from, but and it's tough out there. And so we got to just, you know, use every resource possible, you know, through networking and communication with, you know, different people. And I like the idea of that clearinghouse of dead inventory. There's probably not much dead inventory in this day and age right now, but if there is any, it'll be gone soon. And all the manufacturers probably love hearing that. But we, like Greg said, we don't have, it's not the Brodsky show, it's not the Boniface show, you know, we don't have all the answers. We're just really trying to get the lines of communication open, and people talking about what they're doing and, you know, what's working for them. I think a lot of the key points have been covered already. And I do want to throw out there, I mean, I know I've got a relationship both through my manufacturer that I represent, or the manufacturers I represent, with other dealers, and then through CETA, you know, so I'm kind of going both ways. And I'm, you know, if I get in a pickle and I'm looking for something, you know, there's not a lot of excess stuff out there with dealers, or they might not be willing to give it up right now, but I'm still not afraid to call and ask. And if I didn't have these names and these people that I was able to talk to, or that I knew, you know, through CETA and so forth, it would be near impossible. So I value this, being able to, you know different people and a chance to network like this. And, you know, I know in my situation, I come from the pump, you know, industry, working for Giant Pumps very many years ago. And, you know, I've, as a result, have, you know, developed relationships with, you know, some of the different pump suppliers directly. I just like having the access, and so when it comes to getting creative, you know, we gotta deal with the loyal and the key suppliers and manufacturers we deal with. But sometimes you got to get creative and do whatever you got to do. And you know, that's one thing that we've prided ourselves in, is, you know, doing whatever it takes to be able to take care of a customer. And so, like I said, we don't have all the answers, you know, but as we can share, you know, who's got what inventory, or, you know, somehow or another, clearinghouse of old inventory, stuff like that. And I'm sure this will bring up other ideas too, but, you know, just, so we're all in it together. So we just got to keep moving forward and using all the resources at our disposal. So I think with that, I'm ready to turn it back over to Mike and see if we can get some discussion about what other people are doing in other parts of the country, questions, suggestions, anything like that.
I'd just like to clear up one thing here real quick, Mike, if I could, in regards to the UL listing. Jimmy Welch had dropped a note here, and in the fact I want to make sure that I'm clear that a manufacturer has a listed appliance. They cannot put an unlisted component or an alternate component on there if it's not listed on their testing procedure and their report. But if it goes out as an unlisted appliance, that's my point. There's a lot of manufacturers out there that are producing unlisted componentry today and unlisted products. So, but if there's a listed manufacturer out there with a listed product and they do not have an alternative product or piece of part listed, you cannot put that on the unit itself. And also, I'd like to say, remember when we all started back in last March, Bonnie and I were on a cruise coming back into Miami, and everybody's talking about when you get home, there's going to be a toilet paper shortage. And I was joking, going, boy, wouldn't that be great if we could create a toilet paper shortage for the pressure washer industry? And sad to say, you got to be careful what you ask for because we're living it. Right now, we have a pressure washer shortage and a component shortage. So, and I think this last slide pretty much speaks for itself, Mike. The regional distributors, national distributors, adjacent suppliers. I think we've covered all this as well. So I'm going to bow out of here as well, and let's use our last 15 minutes for questions and answers. I'm sure Kelvin or Chad or somebody has some questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Thanks, Greg. And I did put the last slide. I think, Greg, you spoke to many of these concepts on the particular slide that's being shown now as you opened up your portion of the presentation. So I'll leave it up here for a moment, but yeah, certainly want to open up to dialogue. If folks have questions, are you deploying any strategies that you're finding successful to share with the group today? We can use the time wisely.
Mike, I have a question in regard to inventory and networking between manufacturers, distributors, anybody that's, does CETA have any social media sites, groups like Facebook group that's closed just to CETA members where we can throw one of those questions out there and say, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, or Z. Is anybody out there or know where have one in their lost inventory or know where I can get one, that sort of thing? The contractor side of things uses that a lot to network between each other. It might be a great way for us to do it if there isn't one out there already.
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe there is a Facebook group and perhaps even a LinkedIn group for CETA members. My suspicion is it's not very active, or the number of participants or the dialogue that's taking place there. But I know we have many of the CETA board members listening to today's session, and that certainly should be an action item for us at our next upcoming sit-down meeting together to address how do we ignite that platform from an engagement standpoint. It should be relatively easy to do, and to your point, Cherie, it provides great value to the audiences out there. So we'll take that as an action item with Tracy and Debbie and the board to get that platform up and running.
Mike, this is Jimmy.
Go ahead.
So looking at how do you define a satisfied, I would say the best way to say that is we're in this pandemic, let's face it, and the new clean has changed. Now everybody wants to be clean, and that helps our industry sell product. So the best way to define satisfied is to get the product you need when you need it, and it does the job you need it to do.
That's great, Jimmy. And you're right about the the amount of people using the supplies and the components has exponentially exploded in the last year, which is great for long-term purposes of the industry, but certainly create additional constraints compounded upon a whole bunch of other factors outside of our control, day in and day out. Great. Any other comments or questions before we close out?
Mike, one other thing I'd like to throw in here, if I could, is with the vendors and the manufacturers that are out there. Again, the board and this community has discussed this a little bit in the past, but a lot of the manufacturers and key vendors out there are utilizing the first in, first out, and it's again going back to the toilet paper shortage, that there's some hoarding going on out there, and it's very critical that the people that we're dealing with try to spread that love around a little bit. And again, the blanket PO is one way to do that. That I don't need all 100 in the next 2 weeks. I can take them over the next 3 or 4 months, but it really eases up that flow of manufacturing capacity out to the distributor. And I know that the average distributor in our industry can't afford to bring in a couple truckloads of the blue widget, so they order under their old practices. But some out there are ordering in mega quantities to get through the next 8, 9, 10 months. And for the manufacturer that uses the first in, first out, they're taking up a big percentage of manufacturing, starving the rest of the marketplace over the next few months. And again, I think it's critical that as you open up those communication lines to your key vendors and manufacturers, that you find out what system they're utilizing and how they're working internally in order to spread that around a little bit, make sure that we're covering the instant demand, not the down the road demand.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Greg. Makes me think, as you know, as the supplier selling these components, are we asking the right questions around what is the consumption of those POs that you're sharing with us today? We're grateful to have them. We're excited for the business opportunity, but it's a two-way street where maybe we can support, not be part of the problem by not addressing and asking more follow-up questions, and potentially helping both that customer with a longer lead time on blankets, or certainly, and then provide the ongoing business that will happen in between intervals, providing those folks an opportunity to get their parts in a relatively quick manner of time, as well. So I appreciate that thought, because it may change how we can behave on the supplier side to prevent those log jams from occurring as well. Fantastic.
I'll say too,
some-
having those blankets secured is really, really nice as well, because occasionally, actually more than occasionally right now, those lead times are jumping up weeks to months when they used to be a week or two. And so knowing that you've got that buffer on the shelf, and with a proactive relationship with your vendor, you can see they might send you an email saying, hey, I've really noticed this lead time going up, and you might get another blanket in right now so that you can make it through the whole lead time as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
How's different distributors or relationships with their regional sales managers changed or been? I mean, I know in a couple of instances, I hear of all we're doing is just chasing and figuring out when product is going to be coming, and I guess that's a main focus for their job right at the moment. But it can make it a tough on the relationship sometimes too. But I don't know. I see a lot of great names out there. I'd love to hear some more comments. Not a whole.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody has any. Oh, Chad, you're speaking, but I think you're on mute, buddy. Yeah, we're not hearing you, Chad.
Do you need to unmute him, Tracy?
Tracy's on mute too. Oh, this is good.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no, Chad is not muted. He's unmuted on, but we had this problem earlier with Greg Brodsky when he first came on. He had to go away and come back, go out, come back in, and his mic worked. So it's something with GoToMeeting. It's probably
Okay.
not your computer. So I apologize.
Well, it was, if it's coming out of Chad's mouth, it was going to be profound.
Well, it looks like he just left, so he's probably coming back in. So we need to hang on.
Great.
Oh, Sherry, I love your kitty.
Well, he's coming back. I don't know if I can be heard, but I'm enjoying this meeting very much. I love anything that comes out of Greg's mouth, and I've come to know Al really well over the years. We have created some strategies here in our company to get in front of, as much as we can, these shortages and these dilemmas. But some of the things we've done are counter to what this group has been saying, so it makes you wonder if we're doing the wrong thing. We've definitely been stocking up. We've overwhelmed a couple of our key vendors with orders. But the thing that I think we've done that's been very reflective of what Greg said was we've been looking at our own customers and using the 80-20 rule, because we're having a hard time getting to our customers. Sometimes we're looking at the ones that don't pay that well and we're backing off a little bit. But there's Chad. I'll give the mic over to him. Hopefully he can speak now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I might have missed something. I've been in between answering calls. We're a little short-handed today. It's great to see everybody. I did have just a couple of thoughts. I love the idea of kind of communicating between the distributors, suppliers, and manufacturers on what the needs are to meet the short-term demand, because there have been some times where we've had some equipment held up because the manufacturer was out of pumps, and once they finally told us they were out of pumps, we had the pumps that they needed. But so instead of just saying we can't ship, if we can find a way to say this is what we're missing and meet the demand, I love that. So I love to hear that the association is looking for ways to communicate. The other thing I had some concerns about, and we might not be able to talk about it much, is I've been hearing some grumblings from multiple manufacturers about engine shortages, and at least for portable units, if we can't get the engines, I don't know that anything else matters. Does anybody have any thoughts on what we're hearing about that, both in the short and long term?
I may ask Bryson or Daniel, either of you may have good insights to share on that front.
So this is Bryson. Daniel might be more in tune with it. From my perspective in engineering, I haven't heard much about engine shortages. Daniel?
Yeah, we definitely are running short. I won't give you specific numbers, but as I mentioned earlier, DIY has gone up through the roof, and our demand is, over 2x in some categories of normal. And then when you combine that with all the issues we're having with production and supply chain, it just basically makes for shortages. So it's difficult. Communication is the key, as you mentioned earlier. I mean, some of our OEMs that I didn't really talk to that much. We just did business with them. I mean, some of these OEMs were having 3 calls a week now. Just to really dial in on what's coming, when is it coming, when can I expect it? And because the supply chain is so volatile, you have to redo the numbers all the time, almost daily, because things change all the time. So there is a shortage. The demand is crazy right now. I mean, we didn't even talk about tariffs is changing demand, I should say, for our GCB engines. There's tariffs, everything coming from China. So now our GCB business, which is our residential engine that we make in North Carolina, is has tremendous demand right now. So we're running short on that engine, obviously. So, yeah, I think other than just saying communication is the critical factor here, we've been trying to be as honest as we can with everyone, delivering bad news when we have to, and then trying to find solutions to minimize the effect of the bad news. But it's been difficult. It's been difficult.
Thanks for that question, Chad, and certainly the feedback, Bryson and Daniel. Well, we're approaching the top of the hour, which would conclude our time together today. I would like to thank everybody that presented, took the time to prepare for this session. Based on the number of attendees, it was clearly a passionate topic that's on everybody's mind today. I hope you all took something away from, the tough challenges that the supply chain and the constraints that it's under on a global level. And then certainly took away some ideas for how you can have a positive impact to continue to help your business succeed during turbulent times. I'll share a thought that I learned early in my career from a leader in an old business that I worked for. And this gentleman shared a thought that said, life is 10% what happens and 90% how you respond. And I think that quote's very appropriate in today's age. We don't control whether those ships can make it to port. We don't know if there's a driver to haul a container. So we do not control those things, but we can respond in the ways that Greg and Al talked about the communications and the building of connections and relationships. And Sheree, to your point, let's leverage technology to share within our network of peers if there are equipment or needs that you can produce out there for the group. So I think you all have chosen to respond and invest today, and for that, I think it does speak to the network of CETA and how our members can make each other stronger. And we certainly want to invest and give back to members and add value by finding more of these sessions to host. It's an hour of your day, but it's easy to do in the comforts of your home or your home office. And so we'll continue to try and get education passed through via this methodology rather than those 1 or 2 time annual events where we do get to be in person. With that, I have to give the plug for New Orleans and Power Clean. This is a chance where, as an industry, your suppliers, your manufacturers will be on the trade show floor to discuss in person and foster those relationships. There will be a peer network of distributors out there, as well as a lot of roundtable and education classes to speak about. So as we continue to go through challenges, we do so together as we support our customers and serve their needs. And Power Clean is an awesome place to continue to further your education and your network to make your businesses strong. So with that, thank everybody for today, and we hope to see you soon at a digital event or certainly the in-person events coming up in September. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.